shame can lead a child to self-censor. It also leads to the inhibition of all emotions aside from anger and rage. I'm going to read a little bit of my research to you. According to Dr. Thomas Sheff from the University of California, shame inhibits all emotions except for anger and rage. Think about it. When we go to shame our children, it's an inhibitor, except for anger and rage. It heightens anger and rage. So if you're shaming your child and then they're anger and raging at you, here's why. He said people who feel shamed end up bouncing between two emotional polarities: emotional paralysis, which is freezing, and rage, fighting. Moreover, a child who is shamed will self-censor, leading the adult to believe that their verbal punishment has worked to change their child's behavior. But it is fleeting. Their behavior hasn't changed. They're just not telling you. They're going to start lying to you, and they're going to start keeping secrets. What it does, it inhibits the child's natural expression of self. So why do parents and caregivers shame? I had teachers at school do that. And when I speak of caregivers, I'm talking about teachers, those in authority, grandparents, anyone who is in the care of a child. Well, they often do it without understanding of what they're doing because it feels good. They have a sense of release when they do it. They're angry, they're frustrated, they're tired, and rightfully so. Raising children is difficult. There is no qualms about that. We get a lot of videos that we see of these mothers. They have all these perfect nurseries and things like that. And that's fantastic. But we need to get to the nitty-gritty of parenting, that it's hard. It's hard. And most people don't have nannies or help or villages. I didn't. I had my son when I was 21. He's 22 years old now. And I'm a former teacher. And I taught kids from a very young age all the way through to the end of high school. I know how hard it is to train children. It's really difficult. So it can feel good when we unleash our emotions on our child, especially if they've been pushing all day. But we're teaching them to self-censor, and we're heightening their anger and their rage. So what you're doing when you do that is you're causing more problems for yourself later down the line. It's going to get worse. So momentarily, you may feel justified and experience a self of release. And the emphasis here is on the word temporary. Shame does nothing to change behavior in the long term. And as parents, that's what we need to focus on: long-term behavioral change, not just saying something or doing something right now to make us feel good right now or to make it look like it's working right now. We're raising children into adulthood. We've got to look at this long-term. We've got to have long-term thinking, not short-term thinking. So how does shame sound like? Shame can sound like grow up. Why can't you be like your brother or sister? You're such a spoiled brat. Shame is a verbal punishment that characterizes the child's being. It is about who they are, not what they have done. This is why shame is so detrimental to a child's emotional and social development. Because what you're doing when you're shaming a child, you're saying, this is who you are. You're a brat. You're this. You're characterizing a behavior that is a natural, normal, developmental behavior in children, and you're attributing that temporary behavior to a permanent disposition and a permanent character flaw. You're going to end up causing behavioral problems that perhaps they didn't have before. And look, shame is not just limited to words, but it includes facial expression of disgust and displeasure, and just simply not parenting. It's just going at your child. It's almost like you're punishing them because they've been bombarding you all day. They've not listened to you. They're screaming, they're crying, and it can feel good temporarily, but it is a bad way to parent. The good news is that you are now aware of it and you can change it. So if you've been shaming your child in this way, you can change, and it's never too late to make amends. When a child is shamed, they will work extra hard to please their parents to avoid being shamed. And some of them can also get very angry and then want to fight their parents all the time. And I believe this is why parents unconsciously do this, because they think that their efforts have helped their child to behave better. Oh, look, they're silent. Being silent doesn't mean they've changed their behavior. It now means they're keeping away from you, and your bond is starting to be fractured with them. So when in fact, when a child is shamed, it activates their system called an SDS, self-defense system. It's elevated in their emotional expression, and in their approach systems are inhibited. Okay, so we have an SDS, a self-defense system, and when children are shamed, that is elevated. And their approach system, which helps with emotional regulation, is inhibited. So you're elevating rage and anger, and you're inhibiting the ability to emotionally regulate. That's why it's so bad. So I believe the vast majority of caregivers who do this have no idea about the long-term psychological impacts this has upon their child. All outward behavior has an inner voice. Shaming says, I'm tired, I'm frustrated, I just don't know what else to do or how to cope. The rage, anger, and lack of self-esteem that a child feels on the receiving end says, why won't my mom or my dad accept me? It can make them angry, it can make them sad, they can turn inwards, they can start punishing themselves and lead to low self-esteem. They may think, what is wrong with me? Because children look to you for acceptance. You're the first example of social acceptance in the world. And if they feel like my parent thinks there's something wrong with me, there's nothing wrong with them, the character of who they are. Their character is not developed yet. They don't have a fully developed character. It is their behavior that needs guiding into the right direction, not their character that is being called into question. That is a very important distinction to make, because children who are chronically shamed develop a deep, warped view of themselves and their abilities that can last well into their adult lives. And I come across a lot of parents every day who say this, and I was too. I was abused by both of my narcissistic parents, and they shamed me and all kinds of things that you can imagine, physical abuse, in order to try and get me to change my behavior. And what it did, it made me go real quiet. For a very long time in adulthood, I thought I was an extreme introvert. I wasn't. It was a self-protective measure. And it took a lot of years of inner work in myself to get through that. So why give children the burden of having to release that trauma from childhood in their adult lives when there are so many amazing things that you can do to guide your child back in the right direction? When they're hitting and they're fighting and they're screaming, instead of resorting to low-level measures like shaming and calling out character flaws when their character hasn't been fully developed, become victorious in your parenting. Raise your standards. And you can do that by following me for more tips and tricks, or go to victoriousparenting.com and change the trajectory of your entire family and the legacy to come well after you're gone.